So there's this thing that can happen when you have a bunch of crabs in a bucket. And at some point, one of those crabs notices that they're in a bucket and they start to kind of make an ascent to get out. They start to climb their way up above the crabs and they're sort of looking for a way out. It's really interesting to watch. And the funny thing that happens is a lot of those crabs in the bucket, they don't really just actively act as a ladder for that crab. They don't necessarily all just notice that that crab is sort of ascending the walls of the bucket and start helping him ascend or like start ascending themselves. What they actually do, it's almost like they have this biological instinct where they actually pull the other one down. And I think in a way the reason they do that is because they're sort of looking to keep their herd together. They're looking to protect that crab that's escaping. They see it doing something different. And instinctually, like obviously they don't think about it consciously, I don't imagine, but instinctually they're kind of pulling that one who's moving in a different direction down. And this is a lot what it's like when you actually start to grow yourself, when you start to get into personal development or self-actualization. You're starting to notice that you're in a certain position in life. You're in a certain place and you're not really satisfied with it. You don't just want to be in this position. You don't just want to be hanging out and smoking weed. You don't just want to be playing WoW and having Game of Thrones marathons anymore. It's like you're starting to notice, I'd like to be in a better position, and that can be financially, spiritually, it can be with your health and your fitness, it can be with pursuing more efficacious relationships. You start to want to move in this different direction because you're identifying where you're at, and there's something else that you start to see as possible for you. Check out my last video if you want to grow, do the opposite. I sort of go into detail about what it means to realize where you're at now and where you really want to be getting to. And what happens a lot of the time is at first it's difficult to see this. You got to remember that the people in your life, the friends you have around you, your partner, your family, they're only used to you being one particular way, and humans tend to want to do the thing that's comfortable. And it is inherently uncomfortable that someone in your tribe is changing and is growing and is looking at things in a different way. It's threatening, right? Like it feels like a shock in a way that someone's doing something so different. And sure, if you've been on personal development for a while, you might contrast that and say, nah, Nathan, it's not like that. I want everyone around me to grow. And it's like, yeah, sure. Now that you've been indoctrinated into those ideas of what it means to develop yourself, now that you're familiar with that material a bit more. But you got to remember that a lot of the people around you, your family and your friends, maybe even your partner, they might not be familiar with that. They've just been doing things the way they've been doing things for the longest time. And one minute you used to be this certain way, and they're familiar with that. They're happy with you being that certain way. They're happy with you hanging out and smoking weed and watching Game of Thrones. And then you start doing this different thing. It threatens other people around you. And maybe you get pulled down into that bucket quite a few times, right? You just notice that, there's that saying, isn't there, where they say you're a product of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. And that doesn't necessarily just mean the people in your immediate physical life. It also means the kind of content that you're tuning into, if you're watching videos like this, if you're listening to different podcasts, you're reading different books, those 5 people that you tend to tune into the most, they tend to be a sort of a mirror, like a reflection of where you're at or where you're aspiring to be at. And you get pulled down into that bucket and you start realizing that the social systems that I have set up are not really supporting the kind of life that I feel like I can have for myself. The relationships I have with people, it's not really supporting the kind of thing that I'd really like to be building. And at first, you're just getting pulled down, and then you're starting to make a few ascents, and you're starting to notice that you're sort of separating naturally. It's like it's not even something that you have to try to do. You just notice that you're not that interested in that. And if you keep hanging out with these people, if you keep doing these same things, you're just going to end up in that same place, right? For me, when I was in my late teens and I started to take my personal development really seriously, Started to get heavy into meditation. I was looking to get sober from being an addict for a long time. I started to notice that if I was to just stay in the same position with the same people, I would always kind of just be that same way. I got very scared of just ending up like everyone else I'd grown up around and just ending up in the same town, doing the same things, believing the same things, having the same kind of careers, the same kind of relationships. And it was difficult in a way. Eventually, like when I was 20, I actually moved away. I left my family. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how I was going to afford it. I just knew that I really had to get out of that position and I had to do something new for myself. And I've spent the last few years figuring out how to survive by myself and how to make things work. And you don't necessarily have to leave everyone around you, but you do need to learn how to respect the new values that you're forming for yourself. You're starting to come to terms with the fact that those old values that you had, whether you were cognizant of them or not, they're not really serving the path that you really want to walk in life. There's a new path. You're starting to value your health. You're starting to value having deep and meaningful connections with other people where you actually understand what's going on with them. You're starting to value your education in a serious way. It might not be that you're going to university or anything like that. You might just be reading books and like taking your education into your own hands. But you're starting to develop this new set of values, and they're the kind of values that you need to have if you're going to be the kind of person who gets out of that immediate situation, who takes a different approach, right? You're not going to be able to get really successful in yourself. You're not going to really be able to grow in yourself if you just have the same values as you had before you were on that path. So a lot of it is being able to respect the new values that you're forming and be conscious of those. Be cognizant of the fact that the people around you, they need to be able to respect your values. They don't need to share the exact same values as you, but there's sort of like specific values, and then there's overarching value structures, you know, and the overarching value structure for you might be that you want to grow, you want to see what's possible for you. And you might have a friend who's a completely different, who thinks in a different way, has a different personality type to you, but they do ultimately want to grow just like you, and that overarching value creates a bond between you. Same with your relationship. If you're setting goals together as a couple and you have different things that you want to explore together, you have different interests that you enjoy sharing with one another, it's sort of like you're sharing the overarching value of growing as a couple and having growth and love as the keynote of your relationship. And not just emotionally titillating each other and just sort of like hanging out. So it's being able to respect what those values are. On top of that, it's being able to, there's sort of a litmus test that you can take if people are a good choice in your life, if your friends are right for you. And that means, and the way to test that is that you should be able to be open with them about the things you care about. You should be able to be open with your friends about the things that you're most interested in, about what's moving you, about what your vision is. And they should be able to do the same with you. And when you have a connection like that, it's like, the main problem in the relationship is that you don't have enough time to hang out and do that. You want to sit and speak for 7 or 8 hours about the things that you're looking to do. It's exciting to play ideas off of one another. You should always be able to communicate your inner self to the people around you. That's really how you determine the quality of your relationship. If you can only act on a superficial level with the people around you, it kind of shows you that they don't really have much of a connection to your core self, and you might not really have much of a connection to their core self. And again, these people that you have around you, they're influencing how you're able to move forward. If you have a bunch of people around you who are really unhealthy when you're looking to get in good shape, it's going to be difficult because they're always going to want to get pizza. They're always going to want to smoke a doob outside of KFC. And it's fun in a way. And you probably don't regret the fact that you did that in the past. But if you have a bigger vision for yourself, that has to take precedence. Your new values have to take precedence over the familiarity with what the people in your life used to have with you. And you should be able to communicate that. And if you can't, it's a good sign that they're not really resonating with you at this level. And it's not to say that you just have to immediately cut everyone out of your life. Like, obviously, you don't just want to extricate yourself from your tribe overnight. Maybe that is the best thing, but usually that's not the way you're going to go about it. It's just being able to figure out that you need people around you who share similar overarching values to you, and taking that seriously. Don't let your friends pull you back down into that bucket constantly. Don't let your friends and their idea of who you are dictate what you're capable of. Don't let your family peg you into a certain box and stop you from growing and exploring what's most interesting to you in life. I used to have a friend who, his family were really like evangelical Christians. And as he was getting more into his 20s, he was really interested in developing his sexuality and learning more about relationships. He was interested in learning more about meditation, about self-help. And I remember the pain in him that he couldn't share that with his family. And it almost seemed normal to him. And I was kind of thinking, like, why can't you share this? And he let me in on the fact that they would basically disown him. He wouldn't really have a family if he shared these things. Because they're only willing to accept that point of view that they have. And then when he started to stray from the pack in a way, they just can't accept it. And you can see how that can hold you in place for far too long. It is possible to find people around you, to have people around you who share overarching and even specific values with you. It is possible to have friendships that inspire you, to have friendships where you think back on those conversations and you feel moved by the things you talked about with one another. It is possible. It is possible to have a relationship with someone where your keynote is growth and that you're setting goals together and that you make each other stronger as a couple. You don't pull each other down and just act as a gateway for all your limiting beliefs and habits. It's possible to do that. It's possible to have a relationship with your family where you're seeing the best in them and they're seeing the best in you. But you do have to be willing to communicate that, and you do have to be willing to define what your values are so they become communicable to other people. So you have a platform to speak about these things. And if you are struggling generally with just, you do feel really alone, you do feel like you're really lonely, you do feel like you don't really know where to go right now because your friends just are totally not serving that, and you don't really have another social circle yet, your family aren't serving it, maybe even your spouse, that can be really painful. I think another thing is like learning how to be okay with just being by yourself a lot of the time. We're not really wired for this as social animals. Like, I'm a pretty introverted guy, but there's still a strong yearning in me to connect with people. And look, you're going to find those people. If you're serious about it, you're going to go to the events, you're going to join the online communities, your vibe attracts your tribe. Although that's kind of a cliche spiritual quote, I think that the essence of it is good, right? The kind of thing you put out, the kind of way that you are, does tend to attract people who resonate, because if not, it polarizes them away, right? It's pretty easy to see like that. But you do also need to learn how to be okay with having sovereignty of mind by yourself. Like, and you can even make this kind of fun, right? If you want to go see a movie, you can practice what it's like to actually just go out to a movie by yourself and enjoy your own thinking, and not always feel this impulsive need to just connect to someone right away. Or if you see a meme or something, it's just like, oh yeah, I have to share it with my friends. It's like, can you actually just practice internalizing some of those things that you want to externalize? Can you practice wanting to just take in experiences and savor it and enjoy it for yourself without always needing to just throw it out to other people? I think that's a part of it as well. When you actually honor your own introversion and you actually honor the fact that you do have phases of life that are more reserved. You do have more introverted phases, and then you have more extroverted phases. I'm in a phase right now where I'm pretty extroverted. I have a lot of responsibilities. I have a lot of things to do day in, day out that require me to relate to other people and to connect with other people. But I really fucking appreciate that time where I can just sit by myself and read a book. Can you honor that time you have by yourself as well? Because then you become less desperate to share everything with everyone around you. And that counterintuitively, that can actually have a better effect on the people around you when it comes to sharing the things you're interested in. Because it doesn't feel like you're trying to shove something down people's throats. It's just like they're noticing that change in you, and you're giving them time to acclimate to that. You're giving them time to acclimate to the fact that you are changing some values, you are looking at things differently. We tend to be resistant to stuff that's shoved at us, right? We want our own space and time to understand and explore what those things are. So learn to be within your own values and to be okay within yourself by yourself. But also learn to communicate what you feel like you need from the people around you, and take the time to actually learn about what their values are, what their goals are. You might have a friend who you feel like is just completely like the furthest thing away from the goals you have and the growth goals that you've set for yourself. But you'd be surprised that if you get them at the right moment and you're actually open to communicating that stuff, they might actually have a lot to say there. They might actually have a lot of depth and insight that's totally untapped, and they might really appreciate you opening up and trying to communicate with that about them. You never know. You got to be open to it, So there's one big little fly buzzing around my mic. Anyway, yeah, there are a few notes on how it can be really fucking lonely when you're on the spiritual path, when you're self-actualizing, when you're growing yourself, when you're working on your health, because you are changing values, and a lot of the people around you might not necessarily want that right away. And it's really important to be able to understand that, because one way or another, you're going to be connecting with people in life. So might as well do it in a way where you actually feel aligned and you feel like you're expressing what you need to the most, and they're able to do the same with you. If you got value out of this, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the support on the prior video. I really appreciate everyone's feedback, and the new subscribers, we're just getting warmed up. Like the video, share this with anyone you feel like would get value out of it. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and that's me.